Today, we journey into the dark depths of Lordran to explore one of Dark Souls' most notorious and discussed encounters, the Capra Demon. Over the next few hours, we'll uncover the tragic origins of this lesser demon, examine its role in the greater narrative of the Dark Souls universe, and explore how its legacy extends far beyond that cramped arena in the lower Undead Burg. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin this epic adventure together into the shadows of Izalith's fallen children. Chapter 1. The Birth of Chaos. To truly understand the Capra Demon, we must first journey back to the very dawn of the Age of Fire, to a time when the world was shrouded in grey fog and ruled by ancient dragons. It was during this primordial era that 4 beings would discover the Lord Souls within the first flame, forever changing the course of history. Among these was the Witch of Izalith, a powerful sorceress who would unknowingly become the mother of all demons. The Witch of Izalith was one of the 4 primordial lords, beings of immense power who helped usher in the Age of Fire. She ruled over the ancient city of Izalith, a place of learning and magical study where pyromancy was first developed and refined. Her daughters, skilled in the arts of flame and sorcery, helped her govern this domain of fire and knowledge. For countless years, Izalith prospered as a center of magical learning, its spires reaching toward the heavens as its inhabitants delved deeper into the mysteries of flame. But as the first flame began to fade, threatening to plunge the world back into the Age of Ancients, the Witch of Izalith grew desperate. She had witnessed the beauty and prosperity that the Age of Fire had brought to the world, and she could not bear the thought of watching it all slip away into cold, grey nothingness. In her desperation, she conceived of a plan that would ultimately doom her and her beloved city. She would attempt to recreate the first flame using her own Lord Soul as fuel. The ritual she devised was ambitious beyond measure. Using the incredible power contained within her Lord Soul, she sought to ignite a second flame that could sustain the Age of Fire indefinitely. It's possible she believed that her mastery over pyromancy and her deep understanding of flame would allow her to control this new fire, to guide it and shape it according to her will. But the forces she was attempting to harness were beyond even her considerable abilities. When the Witch of Izalith began her ritual, the results were catastrophic. Instead of creating a controlled, sustainable flame, she unleashed something far more terrible, the flame of chaos. This was not the orderly, life-giving fire of the first flame, but something wild and uncontrolled, a force of pure destruction that consumed everything in its path. The flame erupted outward from the ritual site, engulfing the witch herself and spreading throughout the city of Izalith. The flame of chaos transformed the Witch of Izalith into something monstrous and alien. Her body became twisted and corrupted, merging with the chaotic flame to become what would be known as the Bed of Chaos. This entity, part tree, part flame, part corrupted flesh, became a living seedbed for a new form of life. The power of the chaos flame began to warp and mutate the very essence of life itself, creating beings that had never before existed in the world. From this corruption, the first demons were born. These creatures were not natural inhabitants of the world like the dragons or the gods, but something entirely new and alien. They were spawned from the chaotic energies that now suffuse the ruins of Izalith, their forms shaped by the unpredictable nature of the chaos flame. Each demon was unique in its own way, yet all shared certain characteristics that marked them as children of chaos. The demons came in many forms, from the massive and powerful to the small and cunning. There were the mighty Taurus demons with their great axes and bovine features, the Asylum demons with their massive hammers and corpulent forms, and many others besides. But among all these varied spawn of chaos, one type would prove particularly significant. The Capra Demons, lesser demons that combined bestial cunning with surprising agility and deadly skill with paired weapons. The Capra demons were humanoid in basic structure, but bore the unmistakable marks of their chaotic origin. They possessed the heads of goats, complete with curving horns and glowing red eyes that burned with an inner fire. Their bodies were lean and muscular, built for speed and agility rather than brute strength. Most distinctive were their 4 glowing red eyes, an unnatural feature that marked them as creatures born from chaos rather than natural evolution. These demons wielded paired weapons known as demon great machetes, massive hooked swords made of cast iron. These weapons were perfectly suited to their fighting style, allowing them to deliver devastating attacks from multiple angles while maintaining their mobility. The hooked design of the blades made them particularly effective at catching and tearing flesh, adding to their fearsome reputation as skilled warriors. The birth of the demons marked a turning point in the history of the world. No longer was this a conflict merely between gods and dragons, order and ancient stagnation. Now there was a third force in the world, one born of chaos and destruction, one that threatened both the established order of the gods and the ancient dominion of the dragons. The Age of Fire had given birth to its own greatest enemy, and the stage was set for conflicts that would reshape the very foundations of reality. As the demons spread throughout the ruins of what had once been Izalith, they began to establish their own territories and hierarchies. The Capra demons, with their intelligence and martial prowess, quickly established themselves as formidable predators within this new ecosystem of chaos. They were not the largest or most powerful of the demons, but their combination of speed, skill, and cunning made them among the most dangerous to encounter. The transformation of Izalith into a demon-infested wasteland was not just a local catastrophe, but a threat to the entire world. The demons, driven by the chaotic energies that had created them, began to spread beyond the boundaries of their birthplace. They sought new territories to claim, new sources of sustenance, and new challenges to test their strength against. This expansion would eventually bring them into conflict with the forces of the gods, setting the stage for a war that would last for generations. The Witch of Izalith's attempt to preserve the Age of Fire had instead created its greatest threat. The chaos flame burned without control or purpose, spawning creatures that existed only to spread destruction and disorder. The beautiful city of Izalith was transformed into a hellish landscape of lava and flame, its once proud spires reduced to molten ruins, where demons prowled among the shadows. Yet even in this tragedy, there was a terrible beauty. The demons, for all their destructive nature, were not merely mindless beasts. They possessed their own forms of intelligence and culture, their own ways of understanding and interacting with the world. The Capra demons, in particular, showed signs of sophisticated tactical thinking and an ability to work together when the situation demanded it. They were not just monsters to be slain, but beings with their own complex relationship to the world they had been forced into. As we delve deeper into the story of the Capra demon, we must remember this origin. These creatures were not born evil or malicious by choice, but were shaped by forces beyond their control. They are, in many ways, as much victims of the Witch of Izalith's failed experiment as they are threats to be overcome. This understanding adds a layer of tragedy to every encounter with these beings, knowing that they are the living embodiment of one of history's greatest magical disasters. The legacy of the Chaos Flame would extend far beyond the initial transformation of Izalith. Its influence would be felt throughout the world of Dark Souls, affecting the destinies of gods and mortals alike. The demons born from its power would become a force that shaped the course of history, and the Capra demons would play their own unique role in this grand and terrible saga. Chapter 2: The Demon Wars and the Black Knights. In the aftermath of the Chaos Flame's eruption, the world found itself faced with an unprecedented threat. The demons spreading from the ruins of Izalith were unlike anything that had been encountered before during the Age of Fire. They were not the ancient, predictable enemies that the gods had faced in their war against the dragons, but something new and chaotic, driven by forces that defied understanding or negotiation. Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight and the most powerful of the gods, quickly recognized the existential threat that the demons represented. These creatures were not content to remain within the boundaries of their hellish birthplace, but were actively expanding their territory, corrupting the land wherever they went, and threatening the very foundations of the Age of Fire that Gwyn had fought so hard to establish. The orderly world that the gods had created was being invaded by agents of pure chaos, and decisive action was required. The response to this demonic threat would require Gwyn's most elite warriors. When Gwyn departed to link the fire, his knights split into two groups. The Silver Knights remained in the Forsaken capital in service of their goddess, while others would face the Chaos demons directly. It was these select knights who would become known as the Black Knights, forever marked by their battles against the spawn of chaos. The knights who would face the demons were equipped with special weapons designed to combat these chaotic entities. Their armor was charred black by the flames they fought against, earning them the name Black Knights. These warriors developed specific tactics for dealing with different types of demons, including the fast-moving and cunning Capra Demons. The Black Knights' weapons were larger than those of their Silver Knight brethren, designed to deal with the massive size of many demonic foes. Where Silver Knights had wielded weapons suited for fighting dragons and maintaining order in Anor Londo, the Black Knights needed tools capable of penetrating the thick hides and overwhelming the aggressive nature of Chaos demons. The Capra Demons presented a particular challenge for the Black Knights. Unlike the larger, more obvious demons such as the Taurus demons or Asylum demons, the Capra Demons were fast and cunning. They could move quickly across the battlefield, striking at weak points before disappearing back into the chaos of battle. Their paired machetes allowed them to deliver devastating combinations of attacks that could overwhelm even skilled warriors if they were not prepared. However, the Black Knights proved more than equal to this challenge. Though the details of their specific tactics are lost to history, we know they were successful in containing the demonic threat. Their dedication to duty and their willingness to face the Chaos demons head-on prevented these creatures from spreading beyond their place of origin and threatening the wider world. The war against the demons was not without cost. Many knights gave their lives in the struggle against chaos, their sacrifice ensuring that the demonic threat would not spread beyond the ruins of Izalith. The very flames they fought against marked them permanently, turning their once silver armor black and forever branding them as veterans of this terrible conflict. The ultimate goal was not simply to defeat the demons in battle, but to contain them permanently within the ruins of Izalith. Gwyn recognized that the Chaos Flame itself could not be destroyed without risking even greater catastrophe, so the strategy became one of quarantine rather than elimination. The demons would be sealed within their hellish homeland, prevented from spreading their corruption to the wider world. This containment strategy required enormous resources and constant vigilance. The Black Knights had to maintain a presence along the borders of the demon-infested lands, ready to respond to any attempt at breakout. However, even the most careful containment measures were not perfect. Some demons, including several Capra demons, managed to escape the Great Sealing and make their way into the wider world. The success of the Black Knights in containing the demon threat established them as one of the most elite military forces in the history of Lordran. Their weapons and techniques became specialized for fighting chaotic entities, and their dedication to duty became legendary throughout the realm. They had proven that even the chaotic forces unleashed by the failed experiment of the Witch of Izalith could be contained through superior organization and unwavering determination. Later, many of these same Black Knights would follow Gwyn to the kiln of the First Flame, where they would be burned to ashes when he linked the fire. Their disembodied spirits now wander the world, forever marked by their service in both the demon war and their final sacrifice at the kiln. For the Capra Demons specifically, the war represented both a defining moment and a tragic fate. Those that survived the conflict found themselves forever marked as enemies of order, hunted by the very forces that had once shared the world with them in relative peace. They were no longer simply creatures trying to find their place in the world, but branded as threats to be eliminated wherever they were found. The legacy of the Demon Wars would extend far beyond the immediate military victory. The experience of fighting against chaotic forces taught the gods and their servants valuable lessons about the nature of order and disorder, about the importance of vigilance and preparation, and about the terrible cost of magical experimentation gone wrong. These lessons would prove crucial in the challenges that lay ahead for the realm of Lordran. For the Capra Demons specifically, the war represented both a defining moment and a tragic fate. Those that survived the conflict found themselves forever marked as enemies of order, hunted by the very forces that had once shared the world with them in relative peace. They were no longer simply creatures trying to find their place in the world, but branded as threats to be eliminated wherever they were found. Yet even in defeat, the Capra Demons demonstrated their resilience and adaptability. Those that escaped the sealing of Izalith would prove capable of surviving in hostile territory, of finding new territories to claim, and of adapting their tactics to deal with the changed circumstances of their existence. They would become wanderers and raiders, always moving, always searching for new opportunities to establish themselves in a world that had turned against them. The story of the Demon Wars is ultimately a story about the consequences of playing with forces beyond one's understanding. The Witch of Izalith's attempt to preserve the Age of Fire had instead created its greatest threat, forcing the gods to mobilize their entire military might to contain the damage. The Silver Knight's victory was complete, but it came at enormous cost and established a precedent of eternal vigilance that would burden future generations. As we continue our exploration of the Capra Demon story, we must remember this context of war and containment. These creatures were not simply random monsters placed in the world for players to fight, but the survivors of a great tragedy that had reshaped the entire political and magical landscape of Lordran. Their presence in the world is a reminder of the ongoing struggle between order and chaos, between the desire for control and the unpredictable nature of magical experimentation. Chapter 3: The Undead Burg and the Rise of the Curse. As the Age of Fire began its long decline toward inevitable darkness, new challenges arose that would test the foundations of the divine order that Gwyn had worked so hard to establish. Chief among these was the emergence of the Undead Curse, a mysterious affliction that would transform ordinary humans into immortal hollow shells of their former selves. This curse would prove to be as significant a threat to the established order as the demons had ever been, though in a very different way. The Undead Curse manifested as a strange brand that appeared on humans seemingly at random, marking them for a fate worse than death. Those afflicted with the curse would find themselves unable to truly die, instead returning to life again and again as hollow, mindless creatures driven only by basic instincts. This transformation was not immediate but gradual, with the cursed individuals slowly losing their memories, their personalities, and their humanity until nothing remained but an empty shell animated by dark forces. The appearance of the Undead Curse sent shockwaves throughout the kingdom of Lordran. Humans who had served faithfully as soldiers, craftsmen, merchants, and scholars suddenly found themselves transformed into mindless monsters that threatened their own families and communities. The curse seemed to spread without pattern or reason, affecting the virtuous and the wicked equally, creating panic and paranoia throughout the human population. Gwyn's response to the Undead Curse was characteristically decisive, but ultimately flawed. Rather than seeking to understand and cure the affliction, he chose to quarantine those affected by it. The undead were rounded up and imprisoned in a remote northern asylum, far from the civilized lands where they might pose a threat to the normal population. This policy of containment was presented as a mercy, a way to protect both the cursed and the uncursed, but it was in reality a form of exile that condemned the undead to an existence of perpetual suffering. The Undead Asylum became a grim repository for humanity's failures and fears. Here, the cursed were left to exist in a state of limbo, neither truly alive nor truly dead, watched over by a handful of guards and clerics who ensured that none would escape to threaten the outside world. The conditions in the asylum were deliberately harsh, designed more to contain than to comfort, reflecting the fear and revulsion that the undead inspired in the normal population. However, not all undead were captured and sent to the asylum. Some managed to hide their condition, using various means to disguise the telltale signs of the curse. Others fled to remote areas where they could exist without interference from the authorities. These fugitive undead often gathered in abandoned settlements and ruins, forming their own communities away from the judgment and persecution of the living world. One such place was the Undead Burg, a fortified settlement that had been built during the height of the Age of Fire, but had since fallen into decay and abandonment. The burg had originally been constructed as a way station for travelers and merchants, its walls providing protection from bandits and wild animals. Its strategic location on important trade routes had made it a prosperous community for many years, but the decline of trade and the increasing dangers of travel had gradually emptied it of its original inhabitants. As the undead curse spread and more of the afflicted sought refuge in remote areas, the abandoned Undead Burg became a natural gathering place for these outcasts. The existing fortifications provided some measure of protection, while the remote location meant that they were unlikely to be disturbed by authorities or normal humans. Over time, a community of sorts developed within the burg's walls. Though it was a grim parody of normal human society, the undead who settled in the burg represented a cross-section of Lordran's population. There were former soldiers who retained some memory of their military training, merchants who still attempted to ply their trades despite their condition, scholars who continued their studies even as their minds slowly deteriorated, and common labourers who performed the mundane tasks necessary to maintain even this shadow of civilization. All were united by their shared curse and their exile from the world they had once known. Life in the Undead Burg was harsh and unpredictable. The undead residents were in various stages of hollowing, with some still retaining much of their original personality and intelligence, while others had descended into mindless aggression. This created a constantly shifting social dynamic where alliances and conflicts could change without warning. The more hollow residents were often little more than animals, attacking anything that moved, while those who retained their sanity struggled to maintain some semblance of order and civilization. The architecture of the Undead Burg reflected its dual nature as both a former human settlement and a current undead refuge. The original stone buildings and fortifications remained largely intact, though they showed signs of neglect and decay. Barricades and improvised defences had been added in many areas, creating a maze-like environment that served to channel and contain the movements of the more dangerous hollow residents. The upper levels of the settlement were generally safer and more organised, while the lower areas had become increasingly chaotic and dangerous. It was into this environment that one of the escaped Capra demons eventually made its way. How exactly this demon came to be in the Undead Burg is not entirely clear, but there are several possibilities that make sense within the context of the larger Dark Souls narrative. The demon may have been one of the few that escaped during the original sealing of Izalith, wandering for years or decades before finally settling in the Burg. Alternatively, it may have broken free from containment much later, perhaps as the Divine Order began to weaken with the fading of the First Flame. The arrival of the Capra Demon in the lower Undead Burg represented a significant escalation in the dangers faced by the settlement's residents. While the undead were accustomed to dealing with hollow humans who had lost their sanity, a demon was an entirely different type of threat. The Capra Demon possessed not only greater physical power than any hollow, but also retained its intelligence and tactical cunning. It was a predator among prey, an apex hunter in an environment already filled with danger. The demon quickly established itself as the dominant force in the lower Undead Burg, claiming a section of the settlement as its territory. It took up residence in what appeared to be a former courtyard or small plaza, a confined space that would later become infamous among those who encountered it. The demon's choice of location was tactically sound, providing it with good defensive positions, while also allowing it to control access to important areas of the settlement. The Capra Demon's reign over its claimed territory was not entirely solitary. It somehow managed to gain the allegiance or control of several undead attack dogs, creatures that had once been ordinary hounds, but had been transformed by the same dark forces that affected humans. These dogs served as both companions and hunting partners for the demon, helping it to patrol its territory and eliminate any threats to its dominance. The relationship between the Capra Demon and its canine allies was complex and somewhat mysterious. Demons were not typically known for forming alliances with other creatures, being more inclined towards solitary hunting or simple dominance relationships. However, the Capra Demons seem to have developed a genuine partnership with the dogs, suggesting either a degree of intelligence and adaptability that exceeded expectations, or perhaps some form of magical compulsion or control. The presence of the Capra Demon and its dogs created a reign of terror within the lower Undead Burg. Any undead who ventured into the demon's territory risked being torn apart by the combined assault of the demon's machetes and the dog's fangs. The demon showed no mercy to hollow or sane undead alike, treating all intruders as threats to be eliminated. This aggressive territorial behavior gradually cleared the lower burg of most other inhabitants, leaving the demon as the sole ruler of its domain. The confined nature of the demon's chosen lair worked to its advantage in several ways. The narrow walls and limited space made it difficult for potential enemies to use superior numbers or mobility against it, while also providing the demon with excellent knowledge of the terrain. The presence of a staircase in the area allowed the demon to control the high ground when necessary, while also providing opportunities for dramatic leaping attacks that could catch enemies off guard. Over time, the lower Undead Burg became known throughout the settlement as a place to be avoided at all costs. Stories of the demon and its dogs spread among the remaining inhabitants, growing in the telling until the creature took on almost mythical proportions. Some claimed it was a punishment sent by the gods for the sins of the undead, while others believed it was a guardian placed there to prevent anyone from escaping the burg. The truth, as is often the case, was probably more mundane, but no less terrifying. The demon's possession of a key to the depths below the Undead Burg was particularly significant. This key represented not just access to the underground areas, but also control over one of the primary routes through the settlement. Anyone seeking to explore the full extent of the burg or to access the areas below would eventually have to confront the demon and claim this key from its possession. This made the creature a bottleneck in the progress of any adventurer or treasure hunter who might venture into the area. The key itself raises interesting questions about the demon's history and origins. How had it come to possess such an important item? Had it killed a previous key holder, or had the key been deliberately given to it by some other power? The presence of the key suggests that the demon's residence in the lower burg was not entirely accidental, but may have been part of some larger plan or purpose. As the undead curse continued to spread and the situation in Lordran grew more desperate, the abandoned settlements like the Undead Burg became increasingly important as refuges and gathering places for the afflicted. However, the presence of dangerous creatures like the Capra Demon made these areas as much prisons as sanctuaries. The undead found themselves trapped between the persecution of the normal world and the predations of monsters that had claimed territory in their refuges. The story of the Capra Demon in the Undead Burg represents a microcosm of the larger tragedy that had befallen Lordran. Here was a creature that had been created by one disaster, the the Chaos Flame, now taking advantage of another disaster, the Undead Curse, to establish its own domain of fear and violence. The layers of tragedy and abandonment that had led to this situation reflect the complex ways in which the various crises of the Age of Fire fed into and amplified each other. For the undead residents of the Burg, the demon represented both an immediate physical threat and a symbol of their broader abandonment by the divine order. They had been cast out from normal society because of their curse, forced to seek refuge in ruins and abandoned places, only to find that even these refugees were not safe from the consequences of other magical disasters. Their situation was a perfect example of how the failures of the powerful often fell most heavily on those least able to defend themselves. The Capra Demon's territorial behavior in the lower Undead Burg also demonstrated the adaptability and intelligence of these lesser demons. Rather than simply wandering aimlessly or seeking immediate gratification through violence, the demon had established a sustainable base of operations that served its long-term interests. It had secured territory, established alliances, and positioned itself to control important resources. This suggests a level of strategic thinking that goes beyond simple animal cunning. As we continue our exploration of the Capra Demon's story, it's important to remember this context of exile and abandonment. The creature's presence in the Undead Burg was not just a gameplay challenge for players, but a reflection of larger themes about society's treatment of outcasts, the unintended consequences of harsh policies, and the ways in which different forms of suffering can compound each other. The demon was both a product of and a contributor to the cycle of abandonment and violence that characterized the declining Age of Fire. Chapter 4: The Chosen Undead and the Confrontation. The arrival of the Chosen Undead in the Undead Burg marked the beginning of a new chapter in the settlement's grim history. Unlike the other undead who had found their way to this forgotten corner of Lordran, the Chosen Undead possessed something that set them apart, a sense of purpose that transcended the gradual hollowing that claimed so many others. They had escaped from the Northern Undead Asylum with the help of Oscar, Knight of Astora, and carried with them the knowledge of an ancient prophecy that spoke of an undead who would ring the bells of awakening and potentially break the curse that plagued their kind. The prophecy that drove the Chosen Undead forward was itself a product of the desperate times that had befallen Lordran. As the first flame continued to fade and the various disasters that had struck the realm compounded each other, some among the gods and their servants had begun to seek alternative solutions to the crisis. The prophecy spoke of an undead who would succeed where others had failed, who would possess the strength and determination necessary to rekindle the dying flame and restore order to the world. This prophecy was not merely wishful thinking, but was based on certain observable characteristics that some undead displayed. While most of the cursed eventually succumbed to hollowing, losing their sanity and humanity in the process, a rare few seemed to possess an inner strength that allowed them to retain their purpose and identity even in the face of repeated death and resurrection. These exceptional individuals were marked by their ability to learn from their failures, to grow stronger through adversity, and to maintain their sense of self, even when everything else seemed lost. The Chosen Undead's journey through the Undead Burg was both a test of their abilities and an introduction to the harsh realities of the world they sought to save. The settlement served as a tutorial of sorts, teaching them the basic skills they would need to survive in a world filled with dangers, both mundane and supernatural. They learned to fight against hollow soldiers who retained enough muscle memory to be dangerous opponents, to navigate treacherous terrain filled with traps and ambushes, and to manage their limited resources in an environment where every healing item and weapon repair could mean the difference between success and failure. The Upper Undead Burg presented its own challenges, with hollow soldiers patrolling the ramparts and narrow walkways that connected the various levels of the settlement. These enemies were the remnants of the guards and soldiers who had once protected the Burg during its more prosperous days, now reduced to mindless automatons that attacked anything that moved. Fighting them required not just combat skill, but also tactical thinking, as their positioning on narrow bridges and elevated platforms could make them surprisingly dangerous even for a skilled warrior. The encounter with the Taurus demon on the walls of the Upper Burg served as the chosen undead's first true boss battle, a preview of the kinds of challenges they would face throughout their journey. This massive demon, another spawn of the Chaos Flame, had established itself as the guardian of the upper levels of the settlement. Its presence there was likely not accidental, as it controlled access to key areas and served as a first major test for anyone seeking to progress deeper into the mysteries of Lordran. Defeating the Taurus demon required the chosen undead to demonstrate not just combat prowess, but also creative problem-solving skills. The demon's size and strength made it nearly impossible to defeat through direct confrontation, but the battlefield itself provided opportunities for clever tactics. The narrow bridge where the fight took place, the watchtowers that overlooked the area, and even the demon's own aggressive nature could all be turned to the player's advantage with proper planning and execution. The victory over the Taurus demon opened the path to the lower Undead Burg, bringing the chosen undead one step closer to their inevitable confrontation with the Capra Demon. However, this progression was not automatic, as the path to the lower Burg was blocked by a locked door that required the basement key to open. This key could be obtained from the Taurus demon or found elsewhere in the area, but its very existence served as a reminder that progress in this world was often gated by such practical considerations as keys, tools, and knowledge. And the transition from the upper to the lower Undead Burg represented more than just geographical movement. It was a descent into a more dangerous and chaotic realm. Where the Upper Burg retained some semblance of its original defensive layout and organization, the Lower Burg was a maze of interconnected courtyards, narrow alleys, and abandoned buildings that had been partially transformed by its new inhabitants. The architecture itself seemed to reflect the mental state of the undead who lived there, becoming more confused and threatening as one descended deeper into the settlement. The enemies in the Lower Burg were also more dangerous and unpredictable than those encountered above. Undead assassins lurked in shadows and corners, wielding poison knives and employing hit-and-run tactics that could catch unwary adventurers off guard. These creatures retained enough of their original cunning to set up ambushes and coordinate their attacks, making them far more dangerous than the shambling hollow soldiers of the upper levels. The presence of undead dogs throughout the Lower Burg added another layer of danger and unpredictability to the environment. These creatures were fast and aggressive, able to quickly close distance and deliver multiple attacks that could stagger or overwhelm opponents who weren't prepared for their speed. Their pack mentality meant they often attacked in groups, surrounding enemies, and making coordinated strikes that could be devastating to anyone caught off guard. It was in this increasingly hostile environment that the chosen undead finally approached the domain of the Capra Demon. The very air seemed to grow heavier as they neared the demon's lair, as if the creature's presence somehow corrupted the atmosphere around it. The narrow passages leading to the demon's courtyard were littered with the remains of previous challengers, both undead and otherwise, silent testimony to the fate that awaited those who dared to challenge this particular spawn of chaos. The fog gate that separated the chosen undead from their quarry was itself an ominous sight. These mystical barriers appeared throughout Lordran at locations of particular significance, serving both as warnings of danger ahead and as magical seals that prevented the escape of whatever lay beyond. The fog gate before the Capra Demon's lair seemed particularly thick and oppressive, its swirling mists hiding the horrors that waited just beyond its threshold. Stepping through the fog gate for the first time was an experience that few who survived would ever forget. The immediate assault that greeted intruders was designed to overwhelm and disorient, taking advantage of the momentary vulnerability that came with entering an unknown space. The Capra Demon did not wait for its enemies to orient themselves or assess the situation. It attacked immediately, its twin machetes singing through the air with deadly precision, while its canine allies rushed forward to flank and harass any who dared enter their domain. The arena itself was the demon's greatest tactical advantage. The small, cramped courtyard that it had claimed as its territory was perhaps the most claustrophobic boss arena in all of Lordran, barely large enough to accommodate the demon's bulk, let alone provide room for maneuvering. The walls pressed in from all sides, creating a sense of imprisonment that was both literal and psychological. There was no room for retreat, no space for elaborate tactical maneuvers, only the brutal reality of close quarters combat against an opponent that was perfectly adapted to such conditions. The presence of the staircase in one corner of the arena provided the only significant tactical element in the environment. These narrow stone steps led up to a small platform that offered temporary respite from the demon's attacks, but even this advantage came with its own risks. The demon could follow enemies up the stairs, and its leaping attacks were actually enhanced by the elevation, allowing it to deliver devastating aerial assaults that could end a fight in a single blow. The two undead dogs that served as the demon's allies were perhaps even more dangerous than the demon itself in the opening moments of the encounter. Their speed allowed them to reach intruders almost instantly, and their aggressive nature meant they would attack relentlessly without regard for their own safety. The dog's primary tactical role was to prevent enemies from reaching the staircase or finding any safe space to assess the situation, keeping them pinned in the most dangerous part of the arena where the demon's attacks were most effective. The Capra Demon's fighting style was a perfect adaptation to its chosen environment. Its twin demon great machetes were ideally suited for the close quarters combat that the cramped arena enforced, allowing it to deliver powerful attacks from multiple angles while maintaining constant pressure on its opponents. The demon's four glowing red eyes gave it exceptional awareness of the battlefield, making it nearly impossible to approach from an unexpected angle or find a blind spot to exploit. The demon's signature move was a devastating overhead slam that brought both machetes down in a crushing blow capable of breaking through even the strongest defenses. This attack was telegraphed by the demon raising its weapons high above its head, but the confined space of the arena made it extremely difficult to avoid. The attack was powerful enough to kill most opponents outright if it connected cleanly, and even a blocked version of the attack could shatter shields and leave defenders vulnerable to follow-up strikes. Perhaps even more dangerous was the demon's jumping attack, a move that took advantage of its surprising agility to leap across the arena and deliver a crushing blow to enemies who thought they were safely out of range. This attack was particularly devastating when used from the staircase, as the demon could leap down onto opponents below with tremendous force. The attack was fast enough that it was difficult to dodge once initiated, and its area of effect meant that even near misses could knock opponents prone and leave them open to further attacks. The psychological impact of fighting the Capra Demon was as significant as the physical challenge it presented. The combination of the cramped arena, the immediate assault, and the relentless pressure from multiple enemies created a sense of panic and claustrophobia that could overwhelm even experienced warriors. Many challengers found themselves making poor tactical decisions under pressure, rushing into attacks or failing to properly manage their stamina in the heat of combat. The key to defeating the Capra Demon lay not in overwhelming it with brute force, but in understanding and exploiting the tactical nuances of the encounter. Successful challengers learned to prioritize the elimination of the dogs first, recognizing that the demon's allies were actually more dangerous in the opening moments of the fight than the demon itself. This required quick thinking and decisive action, as the window of opportunity to deal with the dogs was often very brief. The staircase, while dangerous to approach, became crucial for gaining breathing room and separating the various enemies. Skilled fighters learned to use the elevation to their advantage, either by attacking from above or by forcing the demon to expose itself while climbing. The narrow confines of the staircase also limited the demon's ability to use its twin weapons effectively, creating opportunities for counterattacks. Fire-based attacks proved particularly effective against the Capra Demon, a weakness that harked back to its origins in the Chaos Flame. Despite being born from fire, the demon seemed vulnerable to controlled flame attacks, perhaps because they represented a more ordered and directed form of the chaotic force that had created it. Firebombs, charcoal pine resin, and pyromancy spells could all deal significant damage to the creature, often staggering it and creating openings for physical attacks. The demon's apparent weakness to Black Knight weapons was another tactical consideration that skilled warriors could exploit. These weapons, forged specifically for fighting demons during the Great War against Chaos, retained their effectiveness against creatures like the Capra Demon. The enchantments placed on these weapons by the gods made them particularly deadly against chaotic entities, dealing increased damage and sometimes staggering effects that normal weapons could not achieve. For many chosen undead, the fight against the Capra Demon became a defining moment in their journey. It was often the first encounter that truly tested their ability to think tactically under pressure, to adapt their strategies in real time, and to overcome seemingly impossible odds through skill and determination. The harsh lessons learned in that cramped courtyard would serve them well in the greater challenges that lay ahead. The death of the Capra Demon marked more than just another victory in the chosen undead's quest. It represented the elimination of a creature that had been shaped by one of history's greatest magical disasters, a being whose very existence was a testament to the unintended consequences of hubris and desperation. The demon's machetes, left behind as trophies of victory, carried with them the weight of this history, serving as reminders of the price that had been paid for the Witch of Izalith's failed experiment. The key that the demon had guarded so jealously finally fell into the hands of someone who could use it constructively rather than simply as a tool of territorial control. This basement key opened the path to the depths below, allowing the chosen undead to continue their quest, while also potentially providing access to areas that had been sealed off from the other residents of the Undead Burg. In a symbolic sense, the demon's death broke one of the chains that had bound this forgotten corner of Lordran in stagnation and despair. The victory also demonstrated the chosen undead's growing mastery over the skills they would need to succeed in their greater mission. They had proven capable of tactical thinking under pressure, of adapting to unexpected circumstances, and of overcoming enemies that seemed impossibly powerful through careful observation and strategic planning. These abilities would be tested again and again as they ventured deeper into the mysteries of Lordran, but the foundation for their future success had been laid in that cramped courtyard beneath the Undead Burg. For the surviving residents of the Undead Burg, the demon's death might have brought a measure of relief, though it's unclear how many still retained enough sanity to appreciate the change. The lower burg was no longer dominated by a territorial predator, potentially making it safer for the undead, who called it home. However, the fundamental problems that had led to the settlement's decline remained unchanged, and new dangers would likely move in to fill the void left by the demon's absence. The encounter with the Capra Demon also served as an introduction to the broader themes that would define the chosen undead's journey. They had faced a creature that was both monster and victim, a being created by forces beyond its control and shaped by circumstances that it had no hand in creating. This complexity would be echoed in many of the encounters to come, as the chosen undead would discover that the line between hero and villain in Lordran was often blurred beyond recognition. Chapter 5. The Demon Ruins and the Return to Chaos. Following their confrontation with the Capra Demon in the Undead Burg, the chosen undead's journey would eventually lead them to one of the most significant and dangerous locations in all of Lordran, the Demon Ruins. This hellish landscape represented a return to the very source of the demonic threat, the place where the Witch of Izalith's failed experiment had first given birth to the creatures that now terrorized the world. Here, in the shadow of what had once been the great city of Izalith, the chosen undead would encounter Capra demons not as singular territorial guardians, but as part of a larger ecosystem of chaos and destruction. The path to the demon ruins was itself a journey through declining civilization and increasing danger. From the depths beneath the Undead Burg, through the toxic swamps of Blighttown, and finally to the entrance of the ruins themselves, each step took the chosen undead further from the ordered world of the gods and deeper into the realm of primal chaos. This geographical progression mirrored the historical trajectory of Lordran itself, moving from areas that still retained some semblance of divine order to places where chaos had completely overtaken any attempt at civilization. Blighttown, the massive ramshackle settlement built within the branches of enormous trees, served as a particularly significant waypoint on this journey. This vertical maze of platforms, ladders, and rickety bridges was home to a diverse population of outcasts, criminals, and other undesirables who had been forced to make their homes far from the civilized areas of Lordran. The town's residents included not only humans and undead, but also various creatures that had been twisted by exposure to toxic substances and chaotic energies. The presence of Chaos Witch Quelaag in the depths of Blighttown provided the first major hint of what lay ahead. Quelaag was one of the daughters of the Witch of Izalith, transformed by the Chaos Flame into a hybrid creature with the upper body of a woman and the lower body of an enormous spider. Her very existence served as a living reminder of the price that had been paid for the failed attempt to recreate the first flame. And her role as guardian of the second Bell of Awakening connected her directly to the chosen undead's quest. The defeat of Quelaag and the ringing of the second bell opened the path deeper into the earth, toward the demon ruins proper. This descent was both literal and metaphorical, representing a journey not just into the physical depths of the earth, but into the historical depths of Lordran's greatest catastrophe. Each step downward brought the chosen undead closer to the source of the chaos that had shaped so much of the world's current suffering. The entrance to the demon ruins was itself an imposing sight. The massive stone archways and columns that marked the boundary between Blighttown and the ruins spoke of the grandeur that Izalith had once possessed, but they were now cracked and blackened by centuries of exposure to chaotic energies. The very air in the ruins felt different, charged with magical forces that made it difficult to breathe and dangerous to linger. This was a place where the normal rules of reality had been bent and broken by the unleashed power of the Chaos Flame. The first thing that struck most visitors to the demon ruins was the oppressive heat that radiated from every surface. The ground itself was often molten or semi-molten, creating rivers and pools of lava that made navigation treacherous. The heat was not merely uncomfortable, but actively dangerous, capable of killing anyone who remained exposed to it for too long. This environmental hazard was a constant reminder of the chaotic forces that had transformed this place, turning what had once been a thriving city into a literal hellscape. The architecture of the ruins reflected both their original grandeur and their current corruption. Massive stone structures rose from the lava flows, their surfaces carved with intricate patterns that spoke of the advanced civilization that had once flourished here. However, these same structures were now cracked and twisted by the forces that had destroyed their creators. Their once precise geometries warped into alien shapes that seemed to defy architectural logic. It was in this environment that the chosen undead encountered Capra demons in their natural habitat for the first time. Unlike the solitary creature that had claimed territory in the Undead Burg, these demons existed as part of a larger demonic ecosystem, sharing the ruins with other spawn of chaos and competing for resources and territory. This context provided important insights into the true nature of these creatures, revealing aspects of their behavior and capabilities that had been hidden in their previous encounter. The Capra demons of the demon ruins were noticeably different from their lone cousin in the Undead Burg, though whether these differences were due to environment, age, or individual variation was unclear. They seemed more aggressive and less tactical, perhaps because they didn't need to rely on cunning and positioning to the same extent in the more open environment of the ruins. Their fighting style was more direct and brutal, emphasizing raw power over the surgical precision that had made the Undead Burg demon so dangerous in its cramped arena. These demons also appeared to exist in loose groups rather than maintaining strict territorial boundaries. While they were not truly social creatures in the sense of forming organized communities, they seemed to tolerate each other's presence more readily than might be expected from purely solitary predators. This behavior suggested either a level of intelligence that allowed them to recognize mutual benefits in cooperation, or perhaps some instinctual drive inherited from their chaotic origins. The presence of multiple Capra demons in the same area created tactical challenges that were quite different from the single encounter in the Undead Burg. Fighting multiple demons simultaneously required different strategies and presented different risks. The chosen undead had to learn to manage multiple threats at once, to position themselves so that they wouldn't be surrounded or flanked, and to prioritize targets based on immediate danger rather than long-term strategic considerations. The weapons dropped by the Capra demons in the demon ruins provided valuable insights into their nature and origins. The demon great machetes that they wielded were identical to those used by their cousin in the Undead Burg, suggesting that these weapons were either crafted by the demons themselves or were somehow inherent to their nature. The weapon's description as being made of cast iron and lacking any particular magical enchantment suggested a relatively crude manufacturing process, yet their effectiveness in combat was undeniable. The presence of other types of demons in the ruins also provided context for understanding the Capra demon's place in the hierarchy of chaotic creatures. The massive Taurus demons that roamed certain areas of the ruins were clearly more powerful in terms of raw physical strength, but they lacked the speed and agility that made the Capra demons so dangerous. The stone demons that served as guardians in some areas possessed different types of magical abilities, while the various lesser demons each had their own specialized roles in the ecosystem. One particularly interesting aspect of the demon ruins was the presence of what appeared to be crude demonic infrastructure. Bridges, platforms, and other structures had been built or modified by the demons themselves, suggesting a level of intelligence and organization that went beyond simple animal behavior. These modifications served practical purposes, allowing the demons to navigate the treacherous lava flows and reach areas that would otherwise be inaccessible. The relationship between the demons and the environment of the ruins was complex and symbiotic. The chaotic energies that had created them continued to sustain them, while their presence helped to maintain and spread those same energies. The demons seemed to be both products of and contributors to the ongoing corruption of the area, existing in a feedback loop that ensured the continued existence of both the creatures and their hellish habitat. For the chosen undead, the demon ruins represented a significant escalation in the challenges they faced. Not only were the enemies more numerous and powerful than those encountered previously, but the environment itself was actively hostile. The constant threat of lava flows, the oppressive heat, and the chaotic magical energies all combined to create conditions that tested every aspect of their abilities and equipment. The ruins also served as a crucial learning experience for the greater challenges that lay ahead. Here, the chosen undead learned to fight multiple powerful enemies simultaneously, to navigate extremely hazardous terrain, and to manage their resources carefully in an environment where opportunities for rest and recovery were limited. These skills would prove essential in the battles to come, particularly in the depths of Lost Izalith, where the challenges would become even more extreme. The presence of the ceaseless discharge, another of the Witch of Izalith's transformed offspring, served as a bridge between the demon ruins and the even more dangerous areas that lay deeper in the complex. This massive creature, constantly burning with chaotic fire that caused it perpetual agony, was both a guardian and a tragic figure whose defeat was necessary for progress, but whose existence served as a reminder of the true cost of the witch's failed experiment. The tactical challenge of defeating the ceaseless discharge required the chosen undead to think creatively about using the environment to their advantage. The creature's immense size and power made direct confrontation nearly impossible, but the geological features of the area could be used to turn the creature's own strength against it. This lesson in environmental tactics would prove valuable in many subsequent encounters throughout the journey. The progression through the demon ruins also provided important narrative context for understanding the broader themes of the Dark Souls universe. Here, the consequences of the Witch of Izalith's hubris were made manifest in physical form, creating a landscape that served as a monument to the dangers of unchecked ambition and magical experimentation. The demons that inhabited this hellscape were not merely obstacles to be overcome, but living evidence of one of history's greatest tragedies. For the Capra demons specifically, the demon ruins represented both a homecoming and a prison. This was the closest they could come to their place of origin, the site where their kind had first been brought into existence by forces beyond their control or understanding. Yet it was also a harsh and unforgiving environment that offered little comfort or security, a place where they were forced to compete constantly for survival in an ecosystem designed by chaos rather than any intelligent plan. The encounters with multiple Capra demons in the ruins also highlighted the individual variations that existed within the species. While all shared the same basic physical characteristics and fighting style, careful observation revealed subtle differences in behavior, tactics, and even appearance. Some demons were more aggressive, others more cautious. Some relied more heavily on their speed, others on their raw strength. These variations suggested that despite their chaotic origins, the demons were not simply identical copies, but individuals shaped by their own experiences and adaptations. The defeat of the Capra demons in the demon ruins provided the chosen undead with valuable resources and experience, but it also marked a symbolic victory over the forces of chaos. Each demon destroyed was one less agent of disorder in the world, one less reminder of the price that had been paid for magical hubris. Yet the victory was bittersweet, as it required the destruction of beings who were themselves victims of circumstances beyond their control. Chapter 6. The Legacy of Chaos. As our journey through the depths of Dark Souls lore continues, we must now turn our attention to the lasting impact that the Capra demons and their kin would have on the world of Lordran and beyond. The story of these creatures extends far beyond their immediate presence in the first Dark Souls game, weaving through subsequent entries in the series and providing insights into the long-term consequences of the Chaos Flame's unleashing. The defeat of individual Capra demons by the chosen undead was significant, but it represented only a small victory in a much larger struggle against the forces of chaos. The creatures that survived the chosen undead's passage through the demon ruins would continue to exist in their hellish environment, adapting and evolving as the centuries passed. Their story would continue long after the events of the first game, eventually intersecting with the narratives of Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 in ways that would illuminate the true scope of the Witch of Izalith's legacy. The Chaos Flame that had given birth to the demons was not merely a historical curiosity, but an ongoing source of corruption and transformation that would continue to influence the world for millennia to come. Unlike the first flame, which was tied to concepts of order and civilization, the Chaos Flame represented pure change and mutation, a force that could not be permanently contained or controlled. This fundamental difference meant that while the god's influence might wane with the fading of the first flame, the chaotic energies would persist and potentially grow stronger over time. In the world of Dark Souls 2, we see evidence of this persistence in various forms. The old chaos that appears in the game's DLC represents a continuation of the same chaotic forces that had created the original demons, though they have taken on new forms and found new hosts over the intervening centuries. The Iron King's corruption by these forces demonstrates that the threat posed by chaos was not limited to the demons themselves, but could affect any being that came into contact with the underlying energies. The presence of items and weapons related to the original demons in Dark Souls 2 also suggests that knowledge and artifacts from the Age of Fire had survived in some form, carrying with them both the power and the danger of their chaotic origins. The old Iron King's transformation into a being similar to the demons of old shows that the patterns established during the Witch of Izalith's experiment could repeat themselves under the right circumstances, creating new generations of chaotic entities even in the absence of the original Chaos Flame. However, it is in Dark Souls 3 that we see the most direct continuation of the Capra Demon's story. The Smouldering Lake, which represents the ruins of the original demon ruins, and lost Izalith after centuries of further decay, serves as a graveyard for the demonic legions that once terrorized Lordran. Here, amid the ash and ember of a dying flame, lie the corpses of dozens of Capra demons, silent testimony to the ultimate fate of these chaotic spawn. The sight of these demon corpses scattered throughout the Smouldering Lake is both haunting and poignant. These creatures, which had once been among the most feared enemies in Lordran, were now reduced to lifeless husks. Their threat finally ended not by the sword of a hero, but by the simple passage of time and the gradual failure of the forces that had sustained them. The image serves as a powerful reminder of the transitory nature of even the most seemingly permanent threats. The old Demon King, encountered as a boss in Dark Souls 3, represents the last vestige of the original demonic legions. This ancient creature, surrounded by the corpses of its kin, embodies both the power that the demons once possessed and the inevitable decline that awaited all things born from chaos. Its appearance and behavior suggest a being that has outlived its time, clinging to existence in a world that has moved beyond the conflicts that once defined it. The presence of Capra demon corpses, specifically in the old Demon King's arena, is particularly significant. These creatures, which had once been among the most numerous and successful of the demon species, had clearly not survived the long millennia between Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3. Their extinction represents the ultimate failure of chaos to establish a permanent foothold in the world. Despite the initial success of the demonic invasion following the Witch of Izalith's experiment, the weapons and items that can be scavenged from these demon corpses in Dark Souls 3 tell their own story of decline and obsolescence. The once fearsome demon great machetes that had been the signature weapons of the Capra demons were now little more than relics, their power diminished and their purpose lost. The magical energies that had once imbued these weapons with supernatural sharpness and durability had faded along with the chaos flame that had created them. This decline of the demonic threat raises important questions about the nature of chaos itself and its relationship to the broader cosmic forces that govern the Dark Souls universe. The demon's eventual extinction suggests that chaos, for all its destructive power, was not self-sustaining in the way that more ordered forces could be. Without the constant input of chaotic energy from the chaos flame, the demons gradually weakened and died, unable to maintain their existence through their own efforts. The failure of chaos to establish permanent dominance also highlights one of the central themes of the Dark Souls series: the cyclical nature of rise and fall, creation and destruction. The demons had their time of power and influence, just as the gods had theirs, but both were ultimately subject to the same inexorable forces of change and decay that affected all things in this universe. The Capra demon's extinction was not a unique tragedy, but part of a larger pattern that encompassed all forms of life and power. Yet the legacy of the demons extends beyond their physical presence in the world. The lessons learned from fighting against them, the weapons and tactics developed to counter their threat, and the magical knowledge gained from studying their nature all became part of the accumulated wisdom of Lordran's defenders. The Black Knight weapons that were specifically designed to combat demons remained effective against chaotic entities throughout the series, carrying forward the hard-won expertise of the Silver Knights who had first faced these creatures in battle. The architectural and environmental changes that the demons brought to the areas they inhabited also persisted long after their extinction. The demon ruins retained their hellish character even after the demons themselves were gone, serving as a permanent reminder of the chaos that had once reigned there. The modifications and structures that the demons had built or influenced became part of the landscape's history, archaeological evidence of their former presence and influence. For students of Dark Souls lore, the story of the Capra Demon serves as a perfect case study in how the series handles themes of consequence and legacy. These creatures were not simply monsters to be defeated, but the living embodiment of a historical catastrophe. Beings whose very existence told the story of hubris, tragedy, and unintended consequences. Their eventual extinction was not a triumph of good over evil, but a natural conclusion to a cycle that had begun with the Witch of Izalith's desperate experiment. The fact that the Capra demons outlived their creator, surviving for millennia after the Witch of Izalith's transformation into the bed of chaos, speaks to their resilience and adaptability as a species. They were not merely mindless extensions of their creator's will, but independent beings capable of existing and thriving in their own right. This independence made their eventual extinction all the more poignant, as it represented the loss of a unique form of life that had found its own place in the world's ecosystem. The relationship between the Capra demons and the other inhabitants of Lordran also evolved over the centuries, shifting from active hostility to a more complex dynamic of coexistence and mutual avoidance. As the immediate threat posed by the demons diminished with the weakening of the Chaos Flame, other creatures and civilizations learned to work around their presence rather than actively fighting against them. This adaptation represents a form of natural selection operating on a societal level, with successful cultures being those that could find ways to coexist with chaotic elements rather than simply opposing them. The study of demon remains and artifacts in the later games of the series suggests that some scholars and adventurers recognize the historical and magical significance of these creatures. The preservation of demon weapons and the continued study of chaotic magic indicate that the knowledge gained from encounters with demons was considered valuable enough to maintain and pass down through generations. This scholarly interest helps to ensure that the lessons of the demonic invasion would not be forgotten, even after the threat itself had ended. The influence of the Capra demons can also be seen in the development of combat techniques and equipment design throughout the series. The need to fight against fast, agile enemies wielding paired weapons led to innovations in defensive tactics and weapon design that would prove useful against many other types of opponents. The cramped arena combat that was perfected against the Capra demon became a standard test of warrior skill, influencing the design of training facilities and combat trials throughout Lordran. Perhaps most importantly, the story of the Capra demons serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of magical experimentation and the unintended consequences that can arise from attempts to manipulate fundamental forces. The Witch of Izalith's failure was not one of evil intent, but of hubris and desperation, qualities that could affect anyone faced with seemingly impossible circumstances. The demons that resulted from her experiment were a constant reminder of the price that could be paid for such mistakes. Chapter 7: Tactical Analysis and Combat Philosophy. The encounters with Capra demons throughout the Dark Souls series provide some of the most interesting and challenging tactical puzzles in the entire franchise. These battles force players to confront fundamental questions about combat strategy, environmental awareness, and resource management while operating under extreme pressure. Understanding the tactical elements of these encounters provides insights not only into effective gameplay strategies, but also into the broader combat philosophy that underlies the Dark Souls experience. The original Capra demon fight in the lower Undead Burg is widely regarded as one of the most challenging early game encounters in Dark Souls, not because of the demon's individual power level, but because of the specific tactical constraints imposed by the encounter design. The cramped arena, immediate aggression from multiple enemies, and lack of obvious tactical options combine to create a situation that tests players' ability to think quickly and adapt their strategies under pressure. The fundamental challenge of the Capra Demon encounter lies in its complete rejection of the typical boss fight formula that players might expect from other games. Rather than providing a large arena where players can study their opponent's patterns and develop strategies over time, the fight throws players immediately into a life-or-death situation where split-second decisions determine success or failure. This design philosophy reflects one of the core principles of Dark Souls, that comfort and safety are luxuries that must be earned rather than assumed. The presence of the two attack dogs alongside the Capra Demon adds a layer of tactical complexity that goes far beyond simply increasing the number of enemies to fight. The dogs serve multiple strategic functions that make them potentially more dangerous than the demon itself in the opening moments of the encounter. Their speed allows them to reach players almost instantly, their aggressive AI ensures they will attack relentlessly, and their ability to stagger players makes them excellent at preventing escape or creating openings for the demon's more powerful attacks. Understanding the tactical role of the dogs is crucial for developing effective strategies against the Capra Demon. Many unsuccessful attempts at the fight fail because players focus too heavily on the demon itself, treating the dogs as secondary threats to be dealt with after the primary enemy is defeated. However, experienced players quickly learn that the dogs must be prioritized, as their presence makes it nearly impossible to effectively engage with the demon's more predictable attack patterns. The staircase in the arena serves as perhaps the most important tactical element in the entire encounter, providing the only significant terrain feature that players can use to their advantage. However, accessing the staircase requires careful positioning and timing, as the narrow entrance can become a death trap if approached carelessly. The stairs themselves are not entirely safe, as the demon can follow players up and use its jumping attack to devastating effect from the elevated position. The tactical value of the staircase extends beyond simple height advantage or temporary safety. The narrow confines of the stairs limit the demon's ability to use its twin machetes effectively, forcing it to rely more heavily on single attacks, rather than the devastating combinations it can perform in the open arena. This restriction creates windows of opportunity for counterattacks that simply don't exist when fighting the demon on level ground. The archway above the fog gate entrance represents the ultimate tactical objective for many players, providing a position from which ranged attacks can be employed with relative safety. However, reaching this position requires successfully navigating the initial chaos of the encounter and then maintaining enough presence of mind to exploit the positional advantage effectively. The archway is not completely safe, as the demon's jumping attacks can still reach players there, but it provides enough breathing room to allow for more measured tactical decisions. Fire-based attacks prove particularly effective against the Capra Demon, a tactical consideration that adds depth to the encounter for players who have access to such options. Firebombs, charcoal pine resin, and pyromancy spells can all deal significant damage to the demon, while also providing useful crowd control effects. However, using these tools effectively requires careful timing and resource management, as wasting limited fire attacks on misses or ineffective targets can leave players without crucial advantages later in the fight. The demon's vulnerability to Black Knight weapons represents another tactical consideration that rewards players who have successfully defeated these rare enemies elsewhere in the game. The increased damage dealt by these weapons can significantly reduce the length of the encounter, which in turn reduces the number of opportunities for things to go wrong. However, the rarity and weight of Black Knight weapons mean that many players won't have access to these advantages, requiring alternative tactical approaches. Poise becomes a crucial tactical consideration in the Capra Demon fight, as the constant pressure from multiple enemies makes it essential to avoid being staggered at critical moments. Players wearing lighter armor may find themselves unable to execute their planned strategies because they are constantly being interrupted by enemy attacks. The Wolf Ring, which provides significant poise enhancement, can be a game-changing item for players struggling with this aspect of the encounter. The psychological aspects of the Capra Demon fight are as important as the tactical ones, as the intense pressure and limited options can lead to panic and poor decision-making. Many players report that their most successful attempts came when they learned to remain calm and focused despite the chaos around them. This mental discipline becomes a crucial skill that serves players throughout the rest of their Dark Souls journey. Shield management becomes particularly important in the Capra Demon encounter, as the constant barrage of attacks can quickly deplete stamina if players rely too heavily on blocking. Lianing when to block, when to dodge, and when to simply accept damage in favor of positioning becomes a crucial tactical skill. The demon's most powerful attacks can break guards even with strong shields, making it essential to recognize and avoid these devastating moves rather than attempting to tank them. The timing of healing items usage presents another tactical challenge, as the constant pressure from enemies makes it difficult to find safe moments to recover health. Players must learn to create these opportunities through skillful positioning and enemy management rather than expecting them to occur naturally. The brief window after successfully eliminating the dogs often represents the best opportunity for healing, making the efficient dispatch of these enemies even more crucial. Advanced tactical considerations. Movement and positioning skills are tested to their limits in the Capra Demon encounter, as the confined space leaves little room for error. Players must learn to make precise movements in tight spaces, to maintain awareness of multiple threats simultaneously, and to quickly adapt their positioning as the tactical situation changes. These skills become fundamental to success in many later encounters throughout the Dark Souls series, making the Capra Demon fight an essential learning experience for developing players. The concept of crowd control becomes especially relevant when dealing with multiple Capra demons in the Demon Ruins, where players must manage several powerful enemies simultaneously rather than focusing on a single target. The tactics that work against one demon in a confined space must be adapted and expanded to handle multiple demons in a more open environment. This scaling of tactical complexity demonstrates how the core principles learned in the original encounter can be applied to increasingly challenging situations. Environmental hazards in the Demon Ruins add another layer of tactical consideration to encounters with multiple Capra demons. The presence of lava flows, unstable terrain, and other environmental dangers means that players must consider not only the immediate threat posed by the demons, but also the risks associated with their chosen fighting positions. Lianing to use these environmental hazards to advantage, such as luring demons into areas where their mobility is restricted, becomes an advanced tactical skill. The tactical lessons learned from fighting Capra demons extend far beyond these specific encounters, influencing how players approach combat throughout the rest of the Dark Souls series. The importance of prioritizing targets, managing multiple threats simultaneously, and making quick tactical decisions under pressure all become recurring themes in subsequent boss fights and area encounters. In this sense, the Capra Demon serves as a crucial tactical instructor, teaching essential skills through trial by fire. Resource management strategies become particularly important in extended encounters with multiple Capra demons, as players must carefully balance their use of healing items, spell slots, and weapon durability across multiple challenging fights. The high damage output and aggressive nature of these enemies means that mistakes are costly, making it essential to maintain optimal performance throughout extended combat sequences. Lianing to manage these resources effectively becomes a crucial survival skill. The development of pattern recognition skills through repeated encounters with Capra demons helps players learn to read enemy telegraphs and predict attack sequences more effectively. While each demon may have slight individual variations in behavior, the core attack patterns remain consistent enough that experienced players can develop reliable counter-strategies. This pattern recognition becomes increasingly important as players face more complex enemies later in their journey. Team tactics and cooperation strategies come into play when players engage in cooperative multiplayer encounters with Capra demons. The presence of multiple human players changes the tactical dynamic significantly, allowing for more sophisticated strategies such as flanking maneuvers, coordinated attacks, and specialized role assignments. However, it also introduces new challenges such as coordination difficulties and the need to avoid friendly fire incidents. The psychological impact of repeated failures against the Capra demon can be significant, as the punishing nature of the encounter can lead to frustration and discouragement. Learning to maintain a positive mindset and approach each attempt as a learning opportunity rather than a test of personal worth becomes an important psychological skill. Many players report that their breakthrough moment came when they stopped taking deaths personally and started viewing them as sources of tactical information. Advanced players often develop highly specialized strategies for dealing with Capra demons that go beyond the basic tactical approaches. These might include specific equipment loadouts, optimized for demon fighting, precise timing patterns for attack sequences, or elaborate positioning schemes that maximize safety while maintaining offensive pressure. The development of these advanced strategies represents a deep understanding of the game's combat mechanics and enemy behavior patterns. The influence of the Capra demon encounter on subsequent From Software game design can be seen in many later boss fights that emphasize similar tactical principles. The use of confined spaces, multiple enemies, and immediate pressure has become a recurring design motif in games like Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring. Understanding the tactical lessons of the Capra demon fight provides valuable preparation for these later encounters. Chapter 8. Symbolism and Thematic Significance. Beyond their role as challenging enemies and sources of tactical instruction, the Capra demons serve important symbolic and thematic functions within the broader narrative structure of Dark Souls. These creatures embody many of the central themes that define the series, from the consequences of hubris and the nature of sacrifice to questions about the relationship between order and chaos. Understanding these thematic elements adds depth and meaning to encounters that might otherwise be seen as simple combat challenges. The goat-like appearance of the Capra demons carries significant symbolic weight that connects to various mythological and cultural traditions. In many cultures, goats have been associated with both fertility and destruction, representing the dual nature of natural forces that can both create and destroy. This symbolism is particularly relevant to the Dark Souls universe, where the line between beneficial and harmful forces is often blurred or non-existent. The association between goats and demonic imagery in various religious traditions adds another layer of symbolic meaning to the Capra demon's design. These creatures serve as literal manifestations of chaotic evil, embodying the classical concept of demons as corruptors and destroyers of order. However, Dark Souls complicates this traditional symbolism by presenting the demons not as inherently evil beings, but as victims of circumstances beyond their control. The dual-wielding nature of the Capra demon's combat style can be interpreted as a symbol of internal conflict and division. Unlike enemies that fight with a single weapon, representing focused purpose or unified intent, the Capra demons embody the chaotic principle of divided attention and conflicting impulses. Their fighting style reflects the fundamentally chaotic nature of their origin, where multiple forces and intentions compete for dominance. The confined arena of the original Capra demon encounter serves as a powerful metaphor for the constraints and limitations that define the human condition in Dark Souls. Just as players are forced to fight in a space barely large enough to accommodate movement, the characters in the Dark Souls universe find themselves trapped by circumstances largely beyond their control. The claustrophobic nature of the fight reflects the broader theme of limitation and constraint that runs throughout the series. The presence of the attack dogs alongside the Capra Demon can be interpreted as a symbol of corruption and the spread of chaotic influence. These creatures, which were presumably once ordinary animals, have been transformed into aggressive predators that serve the demon's purposes. This transformation reflects the way that chaos spreads and corrupts everything it touches, turning natural order into destructive anarchy. The key that the Capra Demon guards represents more than just a gameplay mechanic. It symbolizes the idea that progress and advancement often require confronting and overcoming our fears and limitations. The demon's possession of this key makes it a literal gatekeeper, controlling access to deeper levels of understanding and achievement. This symbolism reinforces the Dark Souls theme that meaningful progress requires facing difficult challenges rather than avoiding them. The vertical nature of the encounter, with its emphasis on stairs and elevation changes, can be interpreted as a symbol of spiritual or psychological ascension. The struggle to reach higher ground in the fight mirrors the broader human struggle to rise above base instincts and achieve higher forms of consciousness or understanding. The demon's ability to follow players up the stairs suggests that this ascension is neither easy nor permanent. The fire weakness that Capra demons display despite their origin in the Chaos Flame presents an interesting symbolic paradox. This vulnerability suggests that even things born from destructive forces can be destroyed by those same forces when properly controlled and directed. The symbolism points to themes of redemption and the possibility that chaotic elements can be purified or transformed through proper application of ordered principles. The eventual extinction of the Capra demons, as seen in Dark Souls III, carries powerful symbolic weight regarding the temporary nature of all threats and challenges. No matter how insurmountable a problem may seem in the present moment, time and persistence can eventually overcome even the most formidable obstacles. This symbolism provides hope and encouragement for players facing seemingly impossible challenges. The presence of multiple Capra demons in the demon ruins serves as a symbol of how individual problems can multiply and compound when left unchecked. What begins as a single threat in the Undead Burg becomes a systemic problem in the demon's natural habitat, reflecting how small issues can grow into major crises if not addressed promptly and effectively. This symbolism is particularly relevant to themes of responsibility and preventive action. The relationship between the Capra demons and their environment symbolizes the ways in which we are shaped by our circumstances, while also shaping those same circumstances through our actions. The demons have both adapted to their hellish habitat and contributed to its maintenance and expansion, creating a feedback loop that perpetuates the conditions that created them. This symbolism speaks to themes of environmental responsibility and the interconnectedness of all things. The tragic nature of the Capra demons' existence, as creatures created through no choice of their own and forced to live in constant conflict with their environment, serves as a symbol for the broader human condition in Dark Souls. Like the demons, humans in this universe find themselves trapped in circumstances they did not create, forced to make the best of situations that seem designed to ensure their suffering and failure. The intelligence and tactical sophistication displayed by the Capra demons symbolizes the idea that even chaotic forces can develop their own forms of order and organization. This suggests that the distinction between order and chaos may not be as absolute as it initially appears, and that both forces may be necessary components of a functioning universe. The demons' ability to work together and plan strategically challenges simple binary thinking about good and evil. The weapons wielded by the Capra demons, being described as lacking any particular magical enhancement, symbolize the idea that raw determination and skill can be as effective as magical power or divine blessing. This symbolism reinforces the Dark Souls theme that success comes more from personal effort and persistence than from external advantages or special privileges. The multiple red eyes of the Capra demons can be interpreted as symbols of heightened awareness and perception, suggesting that these creatures see aspects of reality that others miss. This enhanced vision might represent the insight that comes from experiencing suffering and chaos firsthand, providing a different but equally valid perspective on the nature of existence. The bone tail possessed by Capra demons serves as a symbol of their connection to death and decay, marking them as creatures that exist at the boundary between life and death. This symbolism connects to broader themes in Dark Souls about the cyclical nature of existence and the inevitability of endings and transformations. The straw skirts worn by the demons can be interpreted as symbols of their connection to natural, primitive forces that exist outside civilized society. This primitive aspect suggests that chaos represents not just destruction, but also a return to more fundamental and authentic ways of being that civilized order has covered over or suppressed. The fact that the Capra demon's alliance with the attack dogs is never fully explained in the game lore leaves room for symbolic interpretation. This mysterious relationship could represent the unpredictable nature of chaos itself, or perhaps the way that corruption and violence can spread to affect even innocent creatures. The ambiguity allows players to project their own understanding onto this relationship. Chapter 9: Cultural Impact and Community Reception. The Capra Demon has achieved a unique position within the Dark Souls community that extends far beyond its role as a challenging boss encounter. This creature has become a cultural icon that represents many players' first serious test in the Dark Souls series, serving as a shared reference point for discussions about difficulty, fair play, and game design philosophy. The community's relationship with the Capra Demon reflects broader attitudes about challenge, perseverance, and the nature of rewarding gameplay experiences. The phrase "get good," which has become synonymous with Dark Souls culture and from software games in general, finds one of its most potent applications in discussions about the Capra Demon fight. For many players, this encounter represents the moment when they first truly understood what Dark Souls was asking of them. Not just manual dexterity or memorization of patterns, but a fundamental shift in mindset about how video games should be approached and understood. Community discussions about the Capra Demon often reveal a fascinating divide between players who view the encounter as a masterpiece of tension and tactical challenge versus those who see it as an example of unfair or poorly designed difficulty. This divide reflects broader philosophical differences about what constitutes good game design and whether challenge should come from player skill, enemy design, environmental factors, or some combination of all three. The development of community strategies and guides for defeating the Capra Demon has become an important part of Dark Souls culture, with experienced players taking pride in helping newcomers overcome this challenging encounter. The sharing of tactical advice, equipment recommendations, and psychological support has created a sense of community solidarity that extends far beyond this single boss fight. Speedrunners and challenge run enthusiasts have found particular fascination with the Capra Demon encounter, developing increasingly sophisticated strategies for defeating the creature quickly and efficiently. These advanced techniques often involve precise timing, optimal equipment choices, and deep understanding of the game's mechanics that go far beyond what casual players might discover. The development of these advanced strategies has contributed to the encounter's legendary status within the community. The Capra Demon has inspired numerous fan works, including artwork, videos, memes, and written content that explore various aspects of the encounter and its significance. These creative works often focus on the emotional journey of fighting the demon, the tactical challenges it presents, or humorous takes on the frustration it can cause. The proliferation of fan content demonstrates the deep impact this encounter has had on the community's collective imagination. The encounter has become a common reference point for discussions about difficulty scaling and player education in video games. Game designers and critics often use the Capra Demon fight as an example when discussing how games can teach complex skills through challenging but fair encounters. The fight's ability to force players to integrate multiple gameplay systems simultaneously has made it a case study in effective difficulty design. Community debates about whether the Capra Demon fight is fair or unfair have contributed to broader discussions about the nature of difficulty in video games and what players should reasonably expect from challenging encounters. These debates often reveal fundamental differences in player preferences and expectations, highlighting the diverse ways that people approach and interpret challenging content. The psychological impact of the Capra Demon encounter has been documented extensively through community testimonials and personal accounts. Many players report that overcoming this fight was a transformative experience that changed their relationship with challenging games and their confidence in their own abilities. The encounter has become a rite of passage that separates casual players from those truly committed to the Dark Souls experience. The influence of the Capra Demon encounter on subsequent From Software game design has been acknowledged by both developers and community analysts. Elements of the fight's design philosophy can be seen in later boss encounters across multiple games, suggesting that the community's strong reaction to this encounter influenced the direction of future content development. Accessibility discussions within the Dark Souls community often reference the Capra Demon fight as an example of the challenges faced by players with various physical or cognitive limitations. These discussions have contributed to broader conversations about inclusive design and whether challenging games have a responsibility to accommodate different player needs and abilities. The encounter has become a popular subject for video content creators, with countless guides, analysis videos, and reaction content focused on the Capra Demon fight. This content has helped to spread awareness of the encounter beyond the immediate Dark Souls community, contributing to its status as a gaming culture touchstone. Community theories and speculation about the Capra Demon's lore and significance have contributed to the broader body of Dark Souls interpretation and analysis. Players have developed elaborate theories about the creature's origins, motivations, and symbolic meaning that go far beyond what is explicitly stated in the game's text. These community interpretations have become part of the encounter's cultural legacy. The Capra Demon has been referenced in discussions about other challenging games and encounters, serving as a benchmark against which other difficult content is measured. The phrase, "it's like the Capra Demon," has become shorthand for describing encounters that combine multiple challenging elements in a confined space with limited room for error. Community modifications and alterations to the Capra Demon encounter have explored alternative versions of the fight that address various criticisms while maintaining its essential character. These fan-made modifications demonstrate the community's engagement with the encounter's design principles and their desire to explore alternative approaches to its core challenges. The encounter has contributed to broader discussions about the relationship between challenge and enjoyment in video games, with the Capra Demon serving as a prime example of content that players might simultaneously hate and love. This paradoxical relationship has become a defining characteristic of Dark Souls culture and has influenced how players approach challenging content in other games. Research into player behavior and learning patterns has often used the Capra Demon encounter as a case study, examining how players adapt their strategies and improve their performance over multiple attempts. These studies have contributed to academic understanding of how players learn complex skills through repeated practice and experimentation. The encounter's reputation has led to its inclusion in various greatest boss fights and most challenging encounters lists within gaming media, cementing its status as a significant moment in video game history. These accolades have helped to preserve the encounter's cultural significance and ensure its continued relevance in discussions about game design and player experience. Chapter 10: Evolution and Adaptation. The story of the Capra Demon does not end with the original Dark Souls game. but continues to evolve and adapt throughout the subsequent entries in the series. This evolution reflects both the changing needs of game design and the ongoing development of the thematic and mechanical elements that define the Dark Souls experience. Examining how the Capra Demon concept has been adapted and reinterpreted across different games provides insights into the evolution of From Software's design philosophy and the changing expectations of the gaming community. In Dark Souls 2, while Capra Demons do not appear directly, their influence can be felt in various enemy designs and encounter structures that echo the tactical challenges of the original fight. The emphasis on multiple enemies in confined spaces, the importance of target prioritization, and the use of environmental hazards to complicate combat encounters all reflect lessons learned from the community's response to the Capra Demon. These design elements show how successful gameplay concepts can be abstracted and reapplied in new contexts. The Old Chaos area in Dark Souls 2's DLC content serves as a spiritual successor to the Demon Ruins, featuring encounters that require many of the same tactical skills that players developed when fighting Capra Demons. The presence of multiple challenging enemies in hazardous environments forces players to apply the crowd control and positioning strategies that were essential for success against the original demons. This continuity demonstrates the lasting value of the tactical lessons embedded in the Capra Demon encounters. Dark Souls III presents the most direct continuation of the Capra Demon story through the corpse-strewn landscape of the Smouldering Lake. Here, players can observe the ultimate fate of these creatures while fighting against their spiritual successors in the form of other demonic entities. The environmental storytelling provided by the demon corpses creates a powerful narrative about the passage of time and the ultimate futility of chaotic ambition. The Old Demon King encounter in Dark Souls III serves as a culmination of the demon storyline that began with creatures like the Capra Demon. This boss fight incorporates many of the tactical elements that made the original Capra Demon encounters memorable while expanding them to accommodate the more sophisticated combat system of the later game. The presence of demon corpses in the arena creates a tangible connection to the earlier games while demonstrating how the threat they once represented has evolved. The design of later From Software games shows clear influence from the Capra Demon encounter in their approach to creating challenging but fair combat scenarios. Bloodborne's emphasis on aggressive, fast-paced combat in confined spaces owes much to the lessons learned from the community's response to the Capra Demon. The game's beast enemies often employ similar tactics of speed and overwhelming aggression that require players to adapt quickly and think tactically under pressure. Sekiro, Shadows Die twice incorporates the Capra Demon's lessons about the importance of positioning and crowd control in its approach to multiple enemy encounters. The game's emphasis on precise timing and spatial awareness in combat situations reflects the tactical skills that players developed when fighting against the original demon and its allies. The confined spaces and multiple threats that characterize many of Sekiro's most challenging encounters show direct lineage to the Capra Demon's design philosophy. Elden Ring represents perhaps the most complete evolution of the concepts introduced in the Capra Demon encounter, featuring numerous situations where players must manage multiple threats in challenging environments while making split-second tactical decisions. The game's open-world structure allows for more varied approaches to these challenges, but the fundamental skills required remain consistent with those developed through fighting Capra Demons. The Omen Killer enemies in Elden Ring serve as direct spiritual successors to the Capra Demons, featuring similar goat-like appearances, dual-wielded weapons, and aggressive combat styles. These enemies demonstrate how the core concept of the Capra Demon can be updated and refined for modern game design, while maintaining the essential characteristics that made the original encounters memorable. The Omen Killer fights incorporate lessons learned from decades of community feedback about the original Capra Demon encounter. The evolution of the Capra Demon concept also reflects changes in player expectations and community standards for what constitutes fair and engaging challenge. Where the original encounter was often criticized for its perceived unfairness, later interpretations of similar concepts have been designed with greater attention to providing players with the tools and information they need to succeed. This evolution shows how community feedback can influence design decisions across multiple game generations. The technical capabilities of newer gaming hardware have allowed for more sophisticated implementations of the tactical concepts pioneered in the Capra Demon encounter. Improved AI systems enable more complex enemy behavior patterns, while enhanced graphics and physics systems allow for more detailed environmental interactions. These technical improvements have enabled designers to create encounters that maintain the essential challenge of the original, while providing more varied and nuanced tactical options. The influence of the Capra Demon can also be seen in games outside the From Software catalog, as other developers have attempted to capture the essence of what made these encounters so memorable and impactful. The emphasis on tactical thinking, environmental awareness, and quick decision-making under pressure has become a common element in many challenging action games, demonstrating the broader impact of the Capra Demon's design philosophy. The modding community has created numerous variations and reinterpretations of the Capra Demon encounter, exploring alternative approaches to its core challenges while maintaining its essential character. These community creations have served as testing grounds for design ideas and have contributed to ongoing discussions about what makes encounters challenging, fair, and engaging. The diversity of community modifications demonstrates the flexibility and enduring appeal of the encounter's basic concept. Academic studies of game design have frequently referenced the Capra Demon encounter as an example of how challenge can be used to create memorable and impactful player experiences. Research into player learning patterns, emotional responses to difficulty, and the relationship between challenge and engagement has often used this encounter as a case study. These academic perspectives have contributed to a deeper understanding of why the encounter has remained so significant in gaming culture. The continuing evolution of the Capra Demon concept reflects the ongoing maturation of both game design as a discipline and the gaming community as a whole. Each new interpretation of these ideas represents an attempt to build upon past successes while addressing previous limitations and adapting to changing player expectations. This evolutionary process demonstrates the dynamic nature of game design and the importance of community feedback in shaping the direction of future content. Chapter 11: The Philosophical Implications. The Capra Demon encounters in Dark Souls raise profound philosophical questions that extend far beyond the immediate challenges of gameplay mechanics and tactical considerations. These encounters serve as interactive metaphors for some of humanity's most fundamental struggles, offering insights into the nature of adversity, the process of personal growth, and the relationship between individual agency and external circumstances. Examining the philosophical implications of these encounters reveals the deeper wisdom embedded within the Dark Souls experience. The concept of the Capra Demon as an embodiment of chaos and disorder touches on ancient philosophical debates about the nature of existence and the relationship between order and chaos in the universe. These creatures represent forces that exist outside the ordered systems that most beings rely upon for meaning and structure. Yet they are not merely destructive, but possess their own forms of intelligence and purpose. This complexity challenges simple binary thinking about good and evil, order and chaos. The existential situation of the Capra Demons themselves raises questions about moral responsibility and the nature of evil. These creatures were brought into existence through no choice of their own, shaped by forces beyond their control, and forced to exist in a world that largely views them as threats to be eliminated. Their aggressive behavior can be understood as a natural response to hostile circumstances rather than evidence of inherent malevolence, complicating traditional notions of moral judgment. The player's relationship with the Capra Demon reflects broader philosophical questions about the nature of conflict and the necessity of violence. While these creatures pose genuine threats that must be addressed, their elimination involves the destruction of beings that are themselves victims of larger cosmic forces. This moral complexity forces players to grapple with questions about when violence is justified and what responsibilities we bear toward those who threaten us. The learning process that players undergo when facing the Capra Demon serves as a metaphor for how humans develop resilience and capability in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. The repeated failures and gradual improvement that characterize most players' experience with this encounter mirror the broader human experience of growth through adversity. This parallel suggests that difficulty and setbacks may be necessary components of meaningful development. The confined nature of the Capra Demon arena can be interpreted as a representation of the constraints and limitations that define human existence. Just as players must work within the restricted space of the encounter, humans must navigate lives bounded by physical, social, and psychological limitations. The challenge becomes not escaping these constraints, but learning to work effectively within them, finding creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. The tactical complexity of the encounter, with its emphasis on multiple simultaneous threats and limited options, reflects the complexity of real-world decision-making under pressure. The fight forces players to prioritize competing demands, make quick decisions with incomplete information, and adapt their strategies as circumstances change. These skills translate directly to many real-world situations where similar cognitive abilities are required for success. The symbolic significance of the key guarded by the Capra Demon touches on philosophical themes about the relationship between challenge and progress. The idea that meaningful advancement requires confronting and overcoming our fears and limitations is a recurring theme in many philosophical traditions. The demon's role as gatekeeper suggests that personal growth often involves facing the very things we most wish to avoid. The community's varied responses to the Capra Demon encounter reflect different philosophical approaches to adversity and challenge. Some players embrace the difficulty as an opportunity for growth and self-improvement, while others view it as an unfair obstacle that impedes their enjoyment. These different perspectives reveal fundamental differences in how people understand the relationship between struggle and value, challenge and meaning. The temporal aspect of the Capra Demon story, from its creation in the distant past to its eventual extinction in the far future, provides a perspective on the transitory nature of all threats and challenges. This cosmic view suggests that even the most formidable obstacles are temporary phenomena in the larger sweep of time, offering comfort and perspective to those facing seemingly permanent difficulties. The relationship between the Capra Demons and their environment illustrates philosophical concepts about adaptation and the mutual influence between beings and their circumstances. The demons have both shaped and been shaped by their hellish habitat, creating a feedback loop that demonstrates the interconnectedness of all existence. This relationship challenges notions of individual independence and highlights the ways in which we are all products of our environments. The tragic nature of the demon's existence raises questions about the meaning and value of life that emerges from suffering and limitation. These creatures manage to find purpose and even forms of cooperation, despite being born into circumstances designed to ensure conflict and struggle. Their persistence in the face of overwhelming adversity suggests something profound about the resilience of consciousness and the drive to create meaning even in the most hostile circumstances. The extinction of the Capra demons, as seen in later games, provides a meditation on mortality and the ultimate fate of all beings. Their corpses in the Smouldering Lake serve as reminders that even the most powerful and enduring entities are subject to the passage of time and the inevitability of endings. This perspective can be either sobering or liberating, depending on how one chooses to interpret the implications. The tactical lessons learned from fighting Capra demons, the importance of prioritization, the value of patience under pressure, the need for strategic thinking, reflect philosophical principles about how to navigate complex and challenging situations in life. These lessons extend far beyond gaming contexts and offer practical wisdom for dealing with various forms of adversity and complexity. The democratic nature of the challenge presented by the Capra Demon, which tests all players regardless of their background or experience level, reflects philosophical ideals about equality and merit. The encounter doesn't care about a player's external circumstances or previous achievements. It demands the same skills and determination from everyone. This egalitarian aspect of the challenge embodies certain ideals about fair competition and personal responsibility. The iterative nature of learning to defeat the Capra Demon, the cycle of failure, analysis, adaptation, and eventual success, mirrors philosophical concepts about the nature of knowledge acquisition and skill development. This process demonstrates that understanding often comes not through sudden revelation, but through persistent effort and gradual refinement of approach. The encounter serves as a practical lesson in epistemology and the development of practical wisdom. Chapter 12: Legacy and Conclusion. As our deep dive into the lore and significance of the Capra Demon comes to a close, we must reflect on the lasting legacy of these creatures and their place in the broader tapestry of Dark Souls mythology. The story of the Capra Demon is ultimately a story about transformation, adaptation, and the unintended consequences of ambition. From their tragic birth in the chaos of Izalith's destruction to their eventual extinction in the smouldering ruins of a dying world, these creatures have served as both obstacles to overcome and reminders of the price of hubris. The Capra Demon's role as one of the most memorable and discussed enemies in the Dark Souls series speaks to the power of thoughtful game design to create experiences that resonate far beyond their immediate gameplay context. These encounters have become cultural touchstones that connect players across different backgrounds and experiences, creating shared memories and common reference points that help define the Dark Souls community. The fact that discussions about the Capra Demon continue years after its introduction demonstrates the enduring impact of well-crafted interactive experiences. The educational value of the Capra Demon encounters extends far beyond the specific tactical skills they teach. These fights serve as masterclasses in pressure management, strategic thinking, and adaptive problem-solving that have applications in many areas of life. The lessons learned in that cramped courtyard about the importance of prioritization, the value of remaining calm under pressure, and the need to adapt strategies based on changing circumstances are skills that serve players well in both virtual and real-world challenges. The thematic richness of the Capra Demon story reflects the sophisticated approach to narrative and world-building that defines the Dark Souls series. These creatures are not merely obstacles to overcome, but complex beings with their own histories, motivations, and tragic circumstances. Their story touches on themes of creation and destruction, order and chaos, responsibility and consequence that give depth and meaning to what might otherwise be simple combat encounters. The evolution of the Capra Demon concept across multiple games demonstrates the iterative nature of game design and the importance of community feedback in shaping creative works. Each new interpretation of these ideas builds upon previous successes while addressing past limitations, creating an ongoing dialogue between creators and audience that enriches the overall experience. This collaborative aspect of meaning-making reflects broader trends in how modern media is created and consumed. The technical achievements represented by the Capra Demon encounters, the precise timing required for success, the complex AI behaviors that govern enemy actions, the environmental design that creates tactical challenges, showcase the sophisticated craftsmanship that goes into creating memorable gaming experiences. These technical elements work together seamlessly to create encounters that feel both challenging and fair, demanding but not impossible. The cultural impact of the Capra Demon extends beyond the gaming community to influence broader discussions about challenge, difficulty, and the value of perseverance in achieving meaningful goals. The phrase "git good" and its associated philosophy have entered mainstream cultural discourse as shorthand for the idea that some valuable experiences require sustained effort and cannot be obtained without genuine commitment and skill development. The philosophical implications of the Capra Demon story offer insights into fundamental questions about the nature of existence, the meaning of struggle, and the relationship between individual agency and external circumstances. These encounters serve as interactive thought experiments that allow players to explore complex ideas through direct experience, rather than abstract contemplation. The wisdom embedded in these experiences becomes part of the player's personal knowledge in ways that purely intellectual engagement cannot achieve. The scientific and academic interest in the Capra Demon encounters reflects their value as case studies in human learning, adaptation, and emotional response to challenge. Research into how players develop strategies, manage frustration, and ultimately overcome seemingly impossible obstacles has contributed to broader understanding of human psychology and the learning process. These insights have applications in education, therapy, and various other fields where understanding human adaptation to challenge is important. The artistic achievement represented by the Capra Demon's design, visual, auditory, and mechanical, demonstrates the maturation of video games as an art form, capable of creating profound emotional and intellectual experiences. The careful integration of lore, gameplay mechanics, visual design, and audio elements creates a holistic artistic statement that communicates meaning through multiple channels simultaneously. This multimedia approach to storytelling represents one of the unique capabilities of interactive entertainment. The democratic nature of the challenge presented by the Capra Demon, which tests fundamental skills rather than external advantages, embodies ideals about merit-based achievement that resonate with many players' values. The encounter doesn't care about a player's background, equipment, or previous achievements. It demands the same skills and determination from everyone. This egalitarian aspect of the challenge has contributed to its status as a fair and meaningful test of ability. The preservation of the Capra Demon's legacy through community discussions, fan works, and continued references in subsequent games ensures that the lessons and experiences associated with these encounters will continue to influence future players and creators. The ongoing vitality of discussions about these encounters demonstrates their enduring relevance and the depth of meaning that players continue to find in them. The Capra Demon story serves as a reminder of the power of interactive entertainment to create meaningful experiences that resonate long after the immediate gameplay has ended. These encounters demonstrate that video games can be vehicles for serious artistic and philosophical expression, capable of communicating complex ideas and emotions through the unique language of interactive experience. The lasting impact of these relatively simple encounters shows the potential for games to create profound and lasting cultural artifacts. As we conclude our exploration of the Capra Demon's place in Dark Souls lore, we must acknowledge that their story is ultimately one of tragedy and transformation. These creatures, born from humanity's greatest magical disaster, lived lives defined by conflict and struggle before eventually succumbing to the passage of time and the failure of the chaotic forces that sustained them. Yet their legacy lives on in the lessons they taught, the challenges they presented, and the memories they created for countless players. The Capra Demon represents both the best and most challenging aspects of the Dark Souls experience. These encounters embody the series' philosophy that meaningful achievement requires genuine effort, that growth comes through overcoming adversity, and that the most valuable experiences are often the most difficult to obtain. In facing these creatures, players don't just defeat enemies, they confront their own limitations, develop new capabilities, and discover reserves of determination they might not have known they possessed. In the end, the true legacy of the Capra Demon lies not in their fearsome reputation or challenging encounters, but in their role as teachers and transformers of those who face them. Through the crucible of combat with these chaotic spawn, countless players have learned valuable lessons about perseverance, strategic thinking, and the satisfaction that comes from overcoming seemingly impossible challenges. These lessons extend far beyond the virtual realm, enriching players' lives and perspectives in ways that continue long after the games themselves have been completed. The story of the Capra Demon reminds us that even the most challenging obstacles can serve positive purposes, that adversity can be a teacher rather than simply an enemy, and that the process of struggling with difficult problems can be as valuable as the ultimate victory. In this sense, these creatures have served a purpose far greater than their creators ever intended, becoming inadvertent guides and mentors for those brave enough to face them. As Dark Souls continues to influence game design and gaming culture, the lessons embodied by the Capra Demon will undoubtedly continue to shape how developers approach the creation of challenging content and how players understand the relationship between difficulty and meaning. The encounters with these creatures have become part of gaming's collective memory, benchmarks against which other challenging experiences are measured and understood. Epilogue: the eternal dance of order and chaos. The tale of the Capra Demon ultimately transcends the boundaries of any single game or series, becoming a universal story about the eternal struggle between order and chaos, creation and destruction, hope and despair. These creatures, born from one of history's greatest magical catastrophes, lived their entire existence caught between forces they could neither understand nor control. In their story, we see reflected our own struggles with circumstances beyond our influence, our own efforts to find meaning and purpose in a world that often seems designed to thwart our ambitions. The Witch of Izalith's failed experiment serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the unintended consequences that can arise from even the most well-intentioned actions. Her desire to preserve the Age of Fire and ensure the continuation of prosperity and civilization was noble in its intent, yet the results of her actions brought suffering and chaos to countless beings. This paradox reminds us that good intentions alone are not sufficient to guarantee positive outcomes, and that the most careful planning cannot always account for the complexity of the forces we seek to manipulate. The Silver Knight's war against the demons represents humanity's ongoing struggle against the chaotic forces that threaten to undermine order and civilization. Their disciplined ranks and tactical precision served as a bulwark against the spreading corruption of chaos, demonstrating that organized resistance and coordinated effort can hold back even the most overwhelming threats. Yet their victory came at great cost, requiring eternal vigilance and the sacrifice of countless lives to maintain the barriers between order and chaos. The chosen undead's encounters with the Capra demons reflect the individual's journey through adversity and the personal growth that can emerge from facing seemingly impossible challenges. Each victory over these creatures represents not just a tactical achievement, but a moment of personal transformation, a step in the ongoing process of becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable. The lessons learned in these encounters extend far beyond the immediate context of the fights themselves, becoming part of the player's repertoire of skills and knowledge that serve them throughout their journey. The eventual extinction of the Capra demons as seen in Dark Souls III provides a meditation on the temporary nature of all threats and the ultimate triumph of persistence over seemingly permanent obstacles. Their corpses in the Smouldering Lake serve as monuments to the idea that no matter how formidable a challenge may appear, time and sustained effort can eventually overcome any adversity. This perspective offers hope and encouragement to those facing their own seemingly insurmountable difficulties. The community's relationship with the Capra Demon demonstrates the power of shared experiences to create bonds and understanding between people from diverse backgrounds. Players who have faced these creatures share a common language of challenge and achievement, that transcends cultural and linguistic barriers. The stories, strategies, and emotional responses associated with these encounters have become part of a collective mythology that connects the Dark Souls community across geographical and generational boundaries. The continuing influence of the Capra Demon concept in subsequent games and media demonstrates the enduring relevance of the themes and ideas these creatures represent. Each new interpretation of fast, aggressive enemies in confined spaces carries forward the tactical and philosophical lessons embedded in the original encounters. This continuity ensures that future generations of players will continue to grapple with the same fundamental challenges and learn the same essential skills. The academic and scientific interest in the Capra Demon encounters reflects their value as case studies in human adaptation, learning, and emotional response to challenge. Research into how players develop strategies, manage frustration, and ultimately achieve success has contributed to broader understanding of human psychology and the learning process. These insights have applications far beyond gaming, informing approaches to education, therapy, and various other fields where understanding human adaptation to difficulty is crucial. The philosophical implications of the Capra Demon story continue to resonate with players and thinkers who find in these encounters profound insights into the nature of existence, struggle, and personal growth. The creatures serve as interactive metaphors for some of humanity's most fundamental challenges, offering wisdom that can be applied to many aspects of life beyond gaming. The depth of meaning that players continue to discover in these encounters demonstrates the sophisticated artistic achievement represented by the Dark Souls series. The technical innovations pioneered in the Capra Demon encounters have influenced game design across the industry, contributing to the development of more sophisticated approaches to creating challenging but fair gameplay experiences. The careful balance of difficulty, the integration of multiple gameplay systems, and the use of environmental factors to create tactical complexity have become standard elements in many modern games. This technical legacy ensures that the innovations pioneered in these encounters will continue to influence interactive entertainment for years to come. The preservation of the Capra Demon's legacy through community efforts, fan works, and continued discussion ensures that the lessons and experiences associated with these creatures will remain accessible to future players and creators. The ongoing vitality of conversations about these encounters demonstrates their enduring relevance and the continued discovery of new layers of meaning and significance. This cultural preservation effort reflects the deep impact these experiences have had on those who encountered them. As we reach the end of our comprehensive exploration of the Capra Demon's place in Dark Souls lore, we must acknowledge that our journey has taken us far beyond the immediate confines of any single enemy encounter. We have explored themes of creation and destruction, order and chaos, individual struggle and collective effort, temporary setbacks and ultimate triumph. Through the lens of these chaotic creatures, we have examined fundamental questions about the nature of existence, the value of adversity, and the process of personal growth through challenge. The Capra Demon stands as a testament to the power of thoughtful game design to create experiences that resonate far beyond their immediate context. These encounters have become cultural artifacts that continue to generate discussion, analysis, and interpretation long after their initial creation. They represent the best of what interactive entertainment can achieve when it aspires to be more than mere diversion, when it seeks to create meaningful experiences that challenge, educate, and transform those who engage with them. In the end, the true legacy of the Capra Demon lies not in any single aspect of their design or implementation, but in the totality of their impact on the players who faced them and the culture that emerged around those encounters. They have served as teachers, challengers, inspirations, and symbols, fulfilling roles that their creators likely never imagined when they first conceived of these chaotic spawn. Their story reminds us that the most meaningful aspects of any creative work often emerge not from the intentions of their creators, but from the interactions between the work and those who experience it. The dance between order and chaos that the Capra Demons represent continues in each new player who faces these challenges, in each community discussion about strategy and meaning, in each subsequent game that builds upon the lessons learned from these encounters. This ongoing dialogue between past and present, creator and audience, challenge and response, ensures that the legacy of the Capra Demon will continue to evolve and remain relevant for generations to come. Thank you for joining me on this extensive journey through the lore, significance, and legacy of the Capra Demon. From their tragic birth in the ruins of Izalith, to their eventual extinction in the smouldering landscapes of a dying world, these creatures have served as more than mere enemies to overcome. They have been teachers, challengers, and ultimately, transformative forces that have shaped countless players' understanding of what it means to face adversity with courage and determination. The lessons embedded in every encounter with these chaotic spawn, about perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds, about the importance of tactical thinking under pressure, about the value of learning from failure and adapting our approaches, extend far beyond the virtual realm into every aspect of our lives. In facing the Capra Demon, we face something within ourselves, and in overcoming these challenges, we discover capabilities and reserves of strength we might never have known we possessed. As we conclude our exploration, remember that the story of the Capra Demon is ultimately our story, a story of beings caught between forces beyond their control, struggling to find meaning and purpose in circumstances they did not choose, yet somehow managing to create moments of beauty, connection, and achievement, despite the chaos that surrounds them. In this reflection, we find not just understanding of these fictional creatures, but insight into our own condition and our own potential for growth through adversity. The legacy of the Capra Demon lives on in every player who refuses to give up in the face of seemingly impossible odds, in every community member who offers guidance and support to struggling newcomers, and in every designer who seeks to create experiences that challenge and transform rather than merely entertain. Through these ongoing efforts, the spirit of what made these encounters so memorable and meaningful continues to influence and inspire new generations of players and creators. And so our journey ends where it began, with an appreciation for the depth and complexity that can be found in even the most seemingly straightforward gaming experiences. The Capra Demon may have been designed as a challenging boss encounter, but it became something far greater. A cultural phenomenon, a shared experience, a teacher, and ultimately, a reminder of the transformative power of well-crafted interactive entertainment. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the lore and significance of the Capra Demon, for more comprehensive explorations of gaming's greatest stories, until next time, keep exploring those epic tales, fellow adventurers, and remember that every challenge you face is an opportunity to discover something new about the worlds you explore and about yourself.